President Trump makes even more moves toward annexing Canada, or at least getting them in line with not screwing over the American people. This and so much more to help me go through all of it, I have Sean Spicer. Sean, thank you for coming on the show again.
Always love being with you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I want to roll a clip for you and I to react to. This is CNN asking Van Jones, what is the vision for the Democrat Party? How do they win going forward? He literally says, we're screwed. We're lost as a party. We don't know what to do. Let's go ahead and watch that together, and then we will react to it.
Yeah. And then just lastly, Van, in terms of Democrats and where they go from here, this last week we did see them some people try to protest during the president's address, and then House leadership getting onto them, other Democrats calling them out. They still seem to be wandering around trying to figure this out. What's your take?
Can we ask another question? Do I be talking about my own party? Can we talk about Ukraine or something? No. Look, man, we're screwed. I mean, we don't know. No, Democrats don't know what to do. This is a nightmare. Somebody like Donald Trump, we thought we'd at least have Hakeem Jeffries in the speaker's chair to hold him back if we didn't have Kamala in there to do the right thing. Listen, the Democratic Party is going through a massive set of internal crises. You have a party that got trapped two ways. One, defending a broken status quo that nobody likes because they thought that Donald Trump was going to make it worse. But when you're defending the status quo, you're going to lose. And then offending most people in the country, calling everybody sexist and racist and transphobic and every other name, and then saying, please follow us. That's not a good strategy, folks. Defending a broken status quo and offending most of the country turns out is not as popular as my party thought it was going to be. And so it's going to take a while for people to get it figured out. I don't like talking about this. I'd rather be beat up. Can you give me something I can beat up Shermichael about? I don't want to talk about my own party.
I know. It's a tough question.
All right. We are screwed. Can I have a different question? We are lost. We literally don't know what to do. Your thoughts on Van Jones' reaction?
Well, give him credit. I mean, he's honest, right? I mean, it's kind of indefensible. And he's right on several fronts. Number one, just overall, they don't have any alternative. They're defending the indefensible. So you've got President Trump and Elon Musk talking about government fraud, waste, all this kind of stuff. And they don't have much of an answer. Do you really want to be on the side of defending, DEI dances in Ireland or 157-year-old people still on the rolls on the Social Security Administration? So they don't have a leg to stand on, and he's absolutely right on that. And then on the cultural issues, men and women's sports, it's a 80-20 maybe issue. So you don't want to defend that. And then I think the last part, Stephen, and he touched on it, but it's worse than he even said, is that their response is like, it's not even feckless. It's pathetic, right? So you see them holding up paddles like they had like an arts and crafts class where before the joint address, they said, let's all sit down and you guys cut out paddles and we'll hold them up like a bunch of 4-year-olds. So, and then they succeed that by doing TikTok dances that I even show them to my kids. And I'm like, do you guys, like, what do you think? And they were like, this is horrible. Like Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut doing trying to use all the cool words. It's cringy is, I think, the word the kids use. And that's the problem, is that they're on the wrong side of policy and then they're on the wrong side of tactics. Like if you're a Democrat, at some point you just like roll over and die. And I feel like, like when you were in junior high or elementary school and like you were at recess playing a game, right? And sometimes the game got tilted, like it was like 10-0, and they'd say like, all right, we get Steven, you guys take Sean, like we're going to rebalance the team. Like I feel like we're like 2 weeks away from them saying like, can you guys send us like 2 of your members of Congress from Texas and we get 1 senator? Because it's actually just, it truly is pathetic.
Maybe they should ask for RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard back, but we're not giving them back. So, Sean, you and I say cringy. My teenagers say ick. It gives me the ick. That's the new word that they like to say. Okay, so Van Jones doesn't want to talk about this. He would literally rather talk about giving money to Ukraine or Donald Trump messing some egg prices or something like that, right? But he says on the defense side, they're defending things that Americans don't care about, and they just keep leaning harder and harder on issues like transgenderism and things that we don't care about. And then he said, and then on the offense side, they're just offending people. Oh, you don't agree with us? You're a racist. Oh, you don't defend women, allowing men into sports? You're a misogynist. So how can they win when they just keep giving the middle finger to their voter?
Well, part of the problem is, and they didn't touch on this, but I think Van would probably agree on this, is they're leaderless. And this happens when a party is out of power. But to this extent, I've never seen in my 30 years in politics. This isn't like you have Chuck Schumer who thinks that he's hip and cool. That's the problem. McConnell, whatever you think about Mitch McConnell, he always got the joke, right? That he was kind of like a intellectual dorky kind of guy. Like he loved the machinations and the workings of the Senate, and he was masterful at it. Like he knew the nuances of, and that was his wheelhouse. But he never tried to fake that he was some kind of hip and cool guy. Schumer actually thinks that he's hip and cool, and that's where I think the problem is that they don't have somebody that can rise above and say, this is where we should be, and this is what our priority, like economically, this is how we should. Because part of the problem is they don't have a leader, and then the secondary part of this, they can't. And what do I mean by they can't? The people that have actually expressed a degree of common sense and pragmatism are unelectable from a party standpoint in the Democratic Party right now. Like you don't get rewarded for being common sense. Rahm Emanuel, thought about, apparently floated his name for being the DNC chairman. And Rahm, again, you don't have to like him, but he is a shrewd tactician. And he was giving some truth to where they were as a party after the election, and nobody wanted to hear it. They called him a corporatist and all this stuff and whatever. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not like a Democrat, but I will say that like he was at least willing to say, here are our problems and here's how we want to address them. And they were like, to heck with you, get out of here. And anybody who's actually speaking truth right now in the Democratic ecosystem is considered a traitor and a false prophet. That's the problem. And we went through this, Stephen, in 2012. We lost. We lost the Romney race, and our party had to go. We were, the people were pissed. And we had to go through this as a party. And we did. And it was very painful for a while, because when you look at your own house, say, what are our problems? What do we need to fix? How can we improve? Whether you're doing that personally or in your business, or in our case, it was a party. It's a very challenging thing, because some people don't want to do it. Some people don't want to air the dirty laundry. They're not willing to have that family discussion about where do we go? How do we succeed? And instead, they want to put out these ick videos, as your kids call them, where they're like making TikTok dances and embarrassing themselves. They're taking themselves deeper into the hole.
Yeah. Well, out of Mitt Romney came forward Donald Trump. It forced him into the light and off of The Apprentice, right? So one, we now have a really deep bench of great leadership that we can pull from, but that will probably happen with the Democrat Party too. This loss of Joe Biden will probably pull forward somebody that none of us really know, that grabs eyeballs and ears.
By the way, Stephen, I think you're right. That's traditionally how it happens. You're absolutely right. That out of the ashes of the old comes the new. The problem is, I don't see it. Stephen A. Smith is that ESPN commentator, is literally running around saying, I can't believe that I'm basically one of the leading candidates, right? Because he's the only one willing to speak truth. The problem right now, as I said, isn't, I agree with you. If you look cycle after cycle, it's that somebody new arises out of the ash heap and says, I will be our leader. I will speak. The base of the Democratic Party won't allow that to happen. And if you want to be that truth teller, that leader of a new direction, it's just, you have to have the base with you. And they don't have it because these guys, the people who are the biggest problem of their party right now, stand in the way of the future. They want you to double down on stupid more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even Van Jones sees it, Stephen A. Smith sees it. They're both going, this is terrible. Our party is really in turmoil. Okay. President Trump announced now that secretaries are in their positions, he needs them to doge their own sector and to right size the government. DOGE and Elon can help. The secretaries will dig in and learn the good, the bad, and the ugly of their respective branch. Your thoughts?
I think that's right. Look, Elon could be and should be a great partner to them. At the end of the day, they are the person in charge. So Sean Duffy is in charge of the transportation department. He needs to know how many people, how many air traffic controllers they need and who the right person is. Elon and his team can help him and say, by the way, these budgets are way off. This contract doesn't make sense. But he is the one that's ultimately responsible for making sure that our airways, highways, seaways are safe. And so by nature, I mean, it's like you bring in a consult. I mean, I look at Elon, he likes to joke that he's tech support. I think he is sort of like, the McKinsey kind of consultant that comes in and says, hey, we can help you be more efficient and run better. But ultimately, you're the boss that has to pull the trigger. So I like the way that President Trump communicated after that impromptu cabinet meeting. And the other thing that people forget is that Elon started on this DOGE mission before a lot of the cabinet was in place. So part of it was him, just going full steam ahead right out of the gate. And then you got these cabinet secretaries that came in. But the other point that I would make is that, and President Trump made this point the other day, it's so true, is that running a cabinet is literally a full-time job. And so having somebody come in and say, hey, while you were doing X, right? So you think about Doug Collins at the Veterans Affairs Committee or administration. He's got to make sure that the health care and the mortgage loans and the suicide prevention, all of the benefits of the VA job assistance to help our nation's veterans is there. But at the same time, even I've had a conversation with Doug, and there's a lot of waste and duplicity there. And so can somebody else like an Elon Musk and his team go in and look and say, hey, while you're doing this, we found all of these things for you that are not efficient, that could be replaced or eliminated. And so you can do your job and we can help you do it better.
Yeah. Well, I read this morning that Elon is about to double the amount of geniuses that are working on the DOGE team as they just continue to find more and more fraud. But I think President Trump is doing the right thing by saying, okay, each secretary now needs to take a scalpel and carefully cut out the cancer that's ruining the government versus USAID, it needed a hatchet. Now we're finding out from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, 83% of the programs in there were Democrat pet projects that were costing tens of billions of dollars. There's no need for that. He came in with the scalpel and figured it out, but it took 6 weeks. Meanwhile, they came in with a hatchet in 6 days and realized, holy crap, the American people are being stolen from and we're being invaded and destroyed with our own tax money. I want to give my community a heads up on something that they should be on the lookout for. Right now, the stock market is crashing. President Trump is trying to right the ship and get things moving to make America great again. But but it's affecting the financial markets, and the US dollar is fighting against BRICS nations and other inflation causing government programs. What you need to do is consider having a portion of your wealth in gold and silver. I do. I've been very happy. It goes up on the regular, and it's outside of the fiat currency. As of right now, Warren Buffett has pulled out hundreds of billions of dollars from the stock market. As of right now, Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, are saying we could be heading for recession, and Robert Kiyosaki is warning that there could be a stock market crash. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen, which is why I put a portion of my money into gold and silver. I want you to call Colonial Metals Group at 800-807-2143. Hedge your bets, protect your money, get some of it outside of the US financial fiat currency. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Stephen-Gardner or snap a picture of the QR code in the lower left-hand corner. You'll thank me by keeping your money safe.
Look, the idea that I've talked to a lot of members of Congress, they hid a lot of this from them. They wouldn't give them access to the books, and I'm glad that we're finally pulling out the weeds from the root, as Elon has said. That's what we need to do so that it doesn't grow back. And as a taxpayer, this goes, you go back to the comment that Van Jones made. There are too many Democrats that say, well, it's only $100 million. It's only, 56 million. It's only, I don't know about you, Stephen, but where I'm from, that's a lot of money. And if I'm going to send dollar, I get it. I love this country. I get that we have to pay to live here in taxes. I'm good with that. That's the deal that the construct that we have. We have an amazing country. We got to have roads. We got to have a national defense. I get that. I'm willing to pay for it. And as I do better, I'm willing to pay a little bit more. I think that's fair. But what I don't think is fair is when I look up and I see my money getting disrespected. I don't care if it's 5,000, 50,000, 5 million. If you're going to tell me that I have to work a little bit harder today and you're going to take a little bit more, then I want to know that you actually respect that you're treating it like it was your own money. And these guys in Washington, mostly Democrats, a lot of folks in the media who are Democrats, seem to think that it's okay because, well, it's not going to balance the budget. I don't care if it balances the budget or not. I mean, I do, but the idea that that's the only goal, there should be a degree of respect that says we actually care about the amount of money that you are spending. If you can give me another $5,000 back this year, 500, I'll take my kids to dinner one more time. I'll put money away for their education, but I can do a lot with that money. I don't really care if it's 50. I mean, my kids and my wife thinks it's funny. I'll grab a change. I put it in a jar. I go to the little thing at the grocery store every once in a while and cash it all out. Sometimes I roll it myself. But hey, if you don't think that that's big dollars, send it my way. I'll take it for you.
Yeah, me too. Let me just drop my address here. I'll give you a joke that wins every time. Whenever I'm in a group of people and taxes come up, I just say, well, I don't like paying them, but at least they're using the money wisely. And then everybody laughs. It gets a laugh every single time because everybody knows the government is terrible with our money. Okay, I want to switch gears with you. Yesterday on Fox News with Larry Kudlow, Elon Musk said under President Trump's direction that he's been instructed to send rockets up and bring home these stranded American astronauts stuck in space. Were you shocked to learn in the last week that President Biden personally ordered the astronauts to be abandoned in space before the election because he didn't want a win for Musk and Donald Trump?
When I read that, I was like, I can't, it's just so, for all of the media coverage of Biden, when you actually start turning over some of these rocks, if you will, the level of pettiness is unreal. For as much crap as they give our side, I know that the media loves to call it whataboutism or something like that, but how is it that that's not a bigger story? There are American astronauts that we knew how to get home, and we chose not to. What does that say? I mean, it's sort of like, and I know some people defended this, and it's not analogous 100% by any stretch of the imagination, but I was like always amazed when we talked about Hamas and what they had done on October 7th. Why was it that our own president and our own government rarely talked about the Americans that were held hostage? Like, we used to be nationally outraged when one or two individuals got held somewhere. And Biden almost refused to discuss it. The media did so much to cover for Biden. And then, by the way, it's just funny because now Jake Tapper and CNN are publishing a book called Original Sin, as if they weren't part of the cover-up, and now they're going to profit from it. Are you kidding me? But this is just, another example of how they talk about misinformation and lying and all this stuff. And I'm like, do you guys have a mirror? Like, you are so full of it, and it's unbelievable. And like I said, Jake Tapper's going to go out there and make money off of this book, as if like they weren't number one on the list of people covering up his cognitive and physical decline.
Yeah. You contrast that with the story that President Trump told at the State of the Union. He's in Butler, Pennsylvania. He's approached. They say, Mr. Trump, if you win, my son is languishing in a Russian prison, and Biden knows that and has abandoned him. Will you bring him home? And President Trump says to that little 93-year-old lady, I promise you, if I win, I will bring your son home. 10 minutes later, he's shot in the head on national TV. Gratefully, he lives. He goes on to fulfill that promise and bring that man home and get him out of that Russian prison. And then it comes out within 7 days that Biden literally ordered NASA and SpaceX and others stand down, abandon the astronauts. We can't have Elon Musk get a win while he's getting so much attention for Trump. It was just one of the more disgusting stories I've read.
The funny thing is, everyone goes, I don't know why he wants to have a dialogue with Putin and da-da-da-da. Mark Fogel is back on U.S. territory, reunited with his mom, as you noted, because Donald Trump could send Steve Witkoff over there and have a dialogue and bring an American home safely. No credit, by the way. That, to your point, didn't happen under Joe Biden. There was why is it? It's like, it's amazing. They don't like his tactics. I keep saying this, Stephen. Everyone goes, the chaos and I go, why are you focused on the process? Right? When you go to a restaurant, do you ever say, like, walk me through how you made this steak? Tell me about it. Well, it tastes fantastic, but I'd like to go into the kitchen and see the process. There's the chef yelling at the sous chef. I'd like to see the process. And I keep telling people all the time, focus on the outcome. So whether it's the economy, Ukraine, everyone wants to talk about the noise, who was seated at the table, what order it went in, blah, 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 blah. In the last 30 days, Taiwan Semiconductor, multi-billion-dollar commitment to here in the United States. Apple, multi-billion-dollar commitment here in the United States. Honda, moving the Civic production from Mexico to Indiana. SoftBank, major investment in the U.S. And they all say it's because of the tariffs. And then everyone says, oh my God, the tariffs are horrible. And I go, really? The guy's at $400 billion of U.S. investment in the last 40 days? That's not a bad ROI.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking this morning, DOGE will probably cost $100 million and save over $1 trillion. The 1,000% return, that's pretty freaking brilliant. That outpaces Nancy Pelosi insider trading in the stock market. Come on, give Trump some credit.
I said this the other day on X, Stephen. Part of the reason I think Pelosi's pissed at Trump is because her whole insider trading scam doesn't work on Trump's policies. She's got to be able to have the insider information to bet on to make her millions of dollars. But when Trump is doing all these things, and because he's clearly not reading her into it, she's not making as much money. And by the way, that's a woman that I hope gets investigated. The idea that somehow there are literally apps now that track her stock purchases so that the rest of us could, buy like her. Forget, buying an ETF on the whatever it is, the Dow 500 or S&P 500. Go in and just buy Nancy Pelosi stock and you'll do fine.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, she does. Speaking of that, this morning I read that FBI Director Kash Patel is requesting a direct phone line between he and Donald Trump so that they can speak about how to make the country safe again without having to go through all of the red tape and the bureaucracy. Do you think that would be a good idea? To me, it seems, I didn't realize that the head of the FBI couldn't reach the president directly, that there were so many bureaucratic levels to go through.
Yeah, it's even worse. I mean, he's requesting a security detail that's not comprised of FBI agents. And what do those two things have in common? Which is he doesn't trust the system. So it's not, part of the reason he wants the direct phone is that he wants to pick up the phone, the president's on the other end, and that it's not through a series of go-betweens. So right now, when I can't say that I'm that familiar with the FBI phone system. I do know the White House phone system. But when I think his concern is when I pick up the phone, I don't need 18 people listening in on my conversations with the president to try to undermine it. I want to know that it's going mano a mano. And that, to me, when I first heard it, I thought, okay, what's the big deal? The the FBI director wants to talk to the president, and okay, so what? The way the press presented it wasn't right, because I was like, I watched Comey talk directly to the president. In fact, that's a whole nother story about why it actually happened that most of the media will never, ever get right. But Comey's the one who initiated those conversations with the president right off the bat after the election, making the president believe that that was the way that you're supposed to communicate with the FBI director. But then as I dug deeper and found out that it's because he doesn't trust the system, I thought to myself, wow, that's telling. When the FBI director says, I can't trust my own people to make sure that I'm having a direct conversation with the president of the United States, and knowing what Kash Patel knows, remember, he was the chief of staff for the director of national intelligence. He worked for the House Intelligence Committee. So he has seen a lot of really classified things. And when when you see the intelligence reports, the raw intelligence reports, and realize what we can and cannot see, I'll leave it at that. It opens your eyes to a lot of things. And I think, or I have to at least wonder, if based on Kash's previous positions, he knows what he's up against.
Okay, interesting. Do you think this morning President Trump doubled down on saying Canada should become a part of the United States, will save you money on taxes, no tariffs, and Canada, fires back with, hey, we're going to hit you with a 25% tariff. Trump says, good, we'll hit you with a 25% tariff as well. Do you think that he's really after Canada like he is Greenland, or do you think he's trying to make a point that we should be good neighbors and not have a 290 to 360% tariff on certain products coming in and out of Canada and America? Your thoughts on that?
So a couple things. One, I think, by the way, it's election day in Greenland. So good luck to all of those 57,000 people, which I do think is funny that somehow I'm like, my town here in Virginia is like 5 times as big. So on Greenland, I think there is a strategic value, and it really is one. And I hope that we build off our current military capabilities there, because it really has strategic value. On Canada, I do hope and believe that he's kidding. Now, let me parse this in a couple ways. I don't want Canada as a state. If you looked at their voting habits, like I don't want them voting. That would be one big state that would be massively progressive. So I don't want that. Number two, you look at what's happening, and part of the reason you saw these additional threats today is that Mayor Ford of Ontario, Canada, tried to threaten the United States with electricity. And I don't know that it's that much the more I dug down on it. But again, I'm not also an electricity and energy expert. But my understanding, so Mayor Ford of Ontario started to threaten Minnesota, Michigan that are somehow connected to that grid, and saying, fine, at first he talked about potentially cutting it off. And then he said, we're going to have huge tariffs going in. And I think Trump was sort of like, listen, son, don't try to play in a league that you're not ready for, and just went, boom, 25% more. It's just, they were trying to play in the big boys sandbox, and they weren't ready. And he smacked them down. And I think that at its core, what this is all about with Canada is this fundamental issue of reciprocity, right? We, over the years, have given countries, India, Europe, the EU, Japan, China, access to our market as many countries developed as sort of an incentive to grow and to see the light on capitalism, whatever. But there's a very different, like we do that with a lot of African countries. There's a thing called AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And there's an idea of trying to get them kind of, it's like a startup mentality. We're trying to help them along the way. And there are trading incentives. But at a certain point, when you look at Europe and you look at like our auto sector or ag sector, and we're getting screwed by them. That's not like some developing country. It's Europe. It's the EU. There is a fairness argument that President Trump is fighting for. Why do we let you into our country at a very low tariff, if any, and then you charge us a significant tariff to get our products, our ag, our services, whether it's financial services or banking or whatever, into your country? Why is that fair? And the thing that's so interesting, Stephen, is you mentioned this on DOGE, right? There's this default that like, it's okay to just waste this money. It's okay to piss it all away. Oh, we'll just get more from the American people. We'll borrow more from China. Who cares? I think the attitude has been the same on trade. Who cares? Let Europe have a better deal. Let Canada have a better deal. There's days when I wake up and go, why is the first time that somebody is willing to fight for the country? Why is it that we were told for years, it's okay. That's just fair trade. That's free trade. Free trade to me isn't like, it's like me saying, let's have free dinners where I go out to dinner and Stephen Gardner pays every time. It's not how you treat a friend. It's not how you treat a partner. And so every time they say, oh, well, Trump's not being nice to our allies. I'm sorry, they're not being nice to us. Why is it that our job is to be the debtor nation? We're $36 trillion in debt, $2 trillion in deficit every year. And yet we have to suck it up over and over again so that they can benefit. You look at NATO, it's a two-way street. We made a deal where we said we would protect one if anyone was attacked, but you all had to spend at least 2% of your GDP on your own national defense. And you know what they said? Wait, why would we do that when we can spend the money on other things and the U.S. will defend us? And then President Trump comes in and says, okay, stop. The deal was we'd have each other's backs, but we all would plus up our own national defenses so that we would be stronger together. But you guys figured we'd pick up the tab. You guys would spend it on other things that you care about in your country. It's a fundamental issue of fairness.
Yeah, the American taxpayer is financially abused. And then when they know that they've hit our threshold, they just print invisible money and then hit us with another tax, which is inflation.
Right.
And in the end, the government is the winner and the American people are just kind of trying to pay their bills. So, okay, final question. 20 million dead Americans still receive Social Security checks every month. It's about $20 billion a month $240 billion a year, $250 billion every year. Could it be that these same names are also getting food stamps, disability, other government assistance programs, and could those names be used for voting in elections?
All right, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. You think that that all these people that are 137, 140 years old are dead?
I'm an optimistic person, but I think we've hit our threshold there.
I think that's probably. I get a kick out of the fact that like Elon's putting these lists out of people that are 137, 140 years old, and people are like, "How does he know?" Like
the date of birth. That's how he knows.
Well, no, it was like somehow it's like, well, the oldest person in the world's 105, and yet you don't think like Elon's like, this doesn't make sense. And I think that's the bigger and broader point that you're touching on when you talk about voting and everything else. Like, if you're dumb enough to allow someone to collect a check on someone who's 150 years old or whatever, are you dumb enough to allow that person to vote? Are you dumb enough to allow them to get other government programs? It really makes me question the government systems. Democrats will say, well, not all those people are getting paid. Somebody is. Someone's cashing that check. So who cares whether they're, I mean, like, we know they're not alive, right? I mean, as the Democrats like to say, trust the science. And I feel like if you're not outraged by that, then there's a problem. And that's where like, the other day, Stephen, Jasmine Crockett, the gadfly congresswoman, was on MSNBC, I think, and was like, let's be clear. It's not illegal to enter this. It's not a crime to enter this country illegally. And I'm like, actually, it is. 8 U.S. Code 32, I think, is the section. I'm like, it actually is against the law. But they don't, the reality doesn't matter to them. Like the idea that you're sitting there and saying, just stop. If someone's 137 years old collecting a check at some form or fashion, isn't that a problem? And the idea that a bunch of Democrats look at you and say, like, what are you insinuating? And you're like, that it's not possible is a problem with the other party right now.
They're like, hey, our voters deserve to get paid. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, somebody is receiving a check. Somebody is cashing it. It just makes me question, are there other programs they're milking? And also, are those dead names voting? And the reality is, as you dig into every state, the Democrat areas refuse to purge their voter rolls.
Right.
Where are those 20 million names?
This is whether it's the voter rolls or the budgets. The fundamental common thread and through line through it all is, I don't want you to look here, because this is how I'm funding a lot of my things. There's part of the dirty secret of DOGE isn't just the money. It's the reality of how Democrats have been funding things for a while that they don't want you to know. It's not that they're not acting surprised. Republicans are going, oh my God, I didn't know we were doing that. And that's ridiculous. And how did we not see this? Democrats are like, well, what's the big deal? Like, they know it's happening. They know it's true. And that's the difference. The reaction tells you everything that you need to know. They're not outraged because they knew it. Yeah.
It's kind of like this story of, Representative AOC of New York is like, oh, wait a minute. I hired an illegal immigrant to be my assistant. I used taxpayer money to pay them $80,000 a year. I've instructed them on how to run the government. I've given them access to all of this stuff. And then the person's like, I'm self-deporting. I'm out of here. You're in trouble now. She's being investigated. Like they know what's going on. And when the outrage is that you're investigating the corruption versus shutting it down, that tells you everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why Marco Rubio's like, we're killing 83% of these programs because these are just Democrat dark money funnels, and we've got to shut it down. Sean, I always appreciate your insight. This has been a great conversation. If people want to follow you online, where should I point them towards?
Two places. One, SeanSpicer.com. You can always get my newsletter there. It's free. Always love a VIP subscription, but it is free. It comes out twice a week. And then secondly, the show is on Rumble and YouTube every night at 6 o'clock. Sean M. Spicer on YouTube, Sean Spicer on Rumble. So those are the two best places to go.
Okay. I will put those links down below. Thank you. We'll have you on again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I will. I always appreciate our conversations, and thank you for having me.